All right, we'll wrap things up here with one last topic, and that's going to be Malachi Nelson, former number one quarterback. I think ESPN might have had him as number one player in the country come out of high school. And he is going to be headed to UTEP, started his career at USC, was at Boise State this last season, and now headed to UTEP. I'm going to pull up his huddle highlights here in a second because that's, unfortunately, that's what we got on him since he hasn't played much at the collegiate level. But, it's an interesting situation here. A guy who was a number one, former number one overall prospect. The injury to his shoulder, I think, is something that is looming large here. But it's tough to think a guy like him just loses his talent overnight. Are you thinking the injury is that bad here?
Yeah, the shoulder injury is interesting because what's been reported was that it was his non-throwing shoulder, but you did see a dip in arm strength from the reps I've seen of him. So hopefully that develops. He's never been the biggest kid in the world as far as weight. So maybe as he just gets more physically mature, you do see development. More than anything, the guy probably just needs reps, right? So playing behind Caleb Williams and Miller Moss. Caleb Williams, first pick of the draft, Heisman Trophy. Miller Moss, solid enough player that he goes to USC, starts, and then gets another starting opportunity at Louisville. So, he was no scrub. Talk about Boise State. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty got a lot of attention, but I thought Maddox Madsen was pretty darn good, right? So it's not like he got beat out by bums here. So this is a chance to play. He said he had a lot of faith in Scotty Walden, had bigger opportunities that he chose not to pursue. So really, we got to see reps, man. Quarterback has become a position where reps matter so much. I say it every show. The best quarterbacks in the NFL as far as young players, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, more reps than anybody. Number one projected quarterback this year, Cam Ward. How many reps did he have between Incarnate Word, Washington State, and now Miami? So a guy like Malachi Nelson is, I think, making the smart decision to go somewhere where he can play and throw the ball. Because if he just goes to another big program and waits or just waits at Boise, it's not going to happen for him. If it's going to happen for him, he's got to get on the field. He's got to play. He's got to throw the ball. He's got to, whatever injuries he's had, he's got to work through those. And then in the process, as he gains weight, gets stronger, maybe his stock rises. If you're talking about NFL or whatever goals he had coming out of high school, those are just as attainable at UTEP as anywhere else because quarterbacks are quarterbacks. Everybody knows who this guy is. If he starts putting up numbers at UTEP, I promise you there'll be plenty of scouts going to El Paso to check him out. So,
and not just that. Unfortunately, he would be a guy who'd be heavily on the radar for the portal next year again.
How many times?
Unfortunately, if you're a UTEP fan, I'm saying.
Right. And look, Pete, how many times have we talked about this on this exact show, right? We've seen guys that sign with the SEC or the Big Ten, and you look at their background, you say, okay, they're coming from a small school, but as a recruit, they went to a big school and it didn't work out there. They went to a smaller school. They went to a JUCO or somewhere else, rehabilitated, so to speak, and then transferred back into a big school. So they're back where they started.
Chandler Morris, to me, is a prime example of that.
Oh, yeah. And it's just crazy. So I'm pulling up, Pete, the 2023 quarterback rankings, right? So these are the top 10 quarterbacks nationally in 2023, which if you think about it, is not that long ago. These are second-year players this year, right? And you look at Arch Manning. He hasn't played yet for obvious reasons, playing behind Quinn Ewers. Nico Iamaleava. I butchered that brutally. I call him Nico. He's been okay, but he hasn't been, a dominant player for Tennessee. I wouldn't say he's been the strength of Tennessee's team despite what he's getting paid. Dante Moore goes from UCLA to Oregon. He's already in the portal. Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma, struggle with no offensive line, no wide receivers. He's in the portal. He goes to Auburn. Next one up, Malachi Nelson. We saw what's happened with his career. Jaden Rashada, right after him, he just went back in the portal after going. It's committed to Miami.
Is that just what's going to look like every year when we look at these top QB lists, though, D?
It could be. Look, go to the line. Aiden Childs, Michigan State, from Oregon State. Austin Mack moving around. Avery Johnson has stayed put, although he's been, people have talked about him potentially going in the portal one of these days. He stayed put. That's just kind of, I don't know. That seems to be the trend where the portal is what it is. Look at the playoff, right, Pete? Drew Aller is a guy that's played and stayed. But
Riley Leonard
was a portal kid. Quinn Ewers was a portal kid. Who am I missing here, Pete?
Will Howard
was a portal kid. So this is the way of the world, man. And I think this is a guy who, Jaden Rashada, who's another California kid, is in the same boat as Malachi Nelson.
Who probably should go somewhere where he can just he knows he's going to be the guy.
Exactly. I think he watches what's happening. You're probably sure he's watching exactly what's happening with Malachi Nelson, thinking, where do I go? Because he went to Georgia. That didn't work out for him. He was buried in the bench there. So what's his next move? To me, he should follow Malachi Nelson's lead, go to a Group of 5 school. It's going to put the football in his hands and have him throw, 30 times a game and then see what he's got.
Agreed. 100%.